Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to Tales from a Retro Gamer, episode number 24. I'm going to be talking about the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, which I just got back from. It was October 18th, 19th, and 20th. It's an excellent show. This is my third year in a row. It was awesome as usual. It's the biggest and one of the best retro gaming conventions every year. So I got in late Friday afternoon, and it was really cool. So I flew into the airport, and not long after I got checked in and everything, I ran into my good buddy John Houston. Now everybody in the Dallas-Fort Worth retro gaming scene knows John. Really nice guy. He's always there to greet you with a big smile and a warm handshake and hug. Really nice guy, really popular in the retro gaming community. It was great seeing him. And so we rode over on the tram together from the airport to the hotel, or to the convention center. And so it was really cool. I was making the trip by myself, so it's always, it's really cool to see, one of my homeboys from DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth area, the minute I got there. So that was great. So good catching up with John, as always. Now, what's really cool about the Portland Retro Gaming Expo is the Friday of the show, they have the arcade open, but not the vendor's room. So if you're a vendor or a guest or someone like that who's going to be obligated on Saturday and Sunday to do panels, to sell your wares or whatever, Friday you're pretty much free and clear. You can play arcade games, pinball machines, just hang out and have a great time, which is exactly what I did that Friday evening. They had some of my favorite machines there, including Baby Pac-Man, which is a really cool pinball video game hybrid. They had Astro Blaster, which I used to absolutely love in the arcade, but it was a difficult game, so it's nice to have it on free play there at the arcade. They had some modern pinball machines, which I really liked. The Beatles machine, which first time I'd played that one before. Monster Bash, it was just my absolute favorite pinball machine of all time, starting the Universal Monsters. And I also love the recent Wizard of Oz machine from Jersey Jack. Great stuff, had a lot of fun playing arcade games. But even more fun, before I get to that, one thing they had at the arcade, which was really, really cool to see, they had a game called, it was from Allied, Tennis Tourney. This was a Pong clone from 1973. Now what was really neat about this, not only is it a really good Pong clone, for two players and everything, there was a couple of young people sitting there, playing the game, and they were really getting into it, having a great time. They were energetic and enthused, and it's really cool to me, as an old school gamer, to see younger people just having a blast on these older, simple machines. It was really neat. Plus, just that machine itself is not one you see very often these days, just out, playable. It was really, really cool. And so Friday night, after I got, pretty much got my fill of gaming in, I went back to the hotel, and so as I walked in, went to the hotel bar, just to hang out a little bit, maybe just relax after the flight and playing games and stuff. And a lot of my friends were there, which was really fun, including the Metal Jesus crew. So I got to catch up with Kenzie and John Hancock and John Riggs and Drunken Master Paul. A lot of fun. Always good to see those guys. That's one of the really neat things about Portland Retro Gaming Expo being in the Pacific Northwest. Typically the Metal Jesus crew is there in full. Always great to see those guys and gals. So stayed up probably a little later than I should have, because Saturday's the big show. It started at 9 a.m. I got in pretty early to the show to finish setting up and everything and to get my books ready. And that Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, I did a panel with Metal Jesus, one of the Metal Jesus crew, Kelsey Lewin. She's a gaming historian. She owns Pink Gorilla Games in Seattle. She's works with the Video Game History Foundation. So we had a really interesting panel. That was awesome. And we did a book giveaway. We gave a copy of the SNES Omnibus Volume 2 to a very happy recipient. And so we were going to give away the book to the person with the most interesting or unusual question. Well, we had a lot of really good questions and couldn't figure out who to give the book to. And so we decided just to ask a trivia question to the person, to everyone that actually answered a question. They were eligible. And so I asked, what was the last US release for the Sega Genesis? And I said it was based on, it was an arcade port of a very classic game. And 1, 2, 3, that was Frogger for the Sega Genesis. Just an arcade perfect port. That was the last US release. That was also the last US release for the Super Nintendo. The only difference is the Sega Genesis is pretty much arcade perfect, where the Super Nintendo is a stinkeroo. You can read about those in the SNES Omnibus, the Super Nintendo version. Okay, so we had a really nice panel, a good turnout. It was a lot of fun. Thanks, Kelsey, for that. So then it was back to my table. And so throughout the weekend, Saturday and all day Sunday, my booth was right next to Tim Kitzrow, who is the voice of NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, and a whole bunch of other games, a bunch of pinball machines and stuff. And he's the one, boom shakalaka, and all that stuff. If you played a lot of NBA Jam, you know all the voice effects. The entire weekend, he was entertaining fans, people that would come up to get autographs or, get their picture made with him. He was loud, he was funny, he was doing all his voice effects from the games. And check out this video real quick. I'm going to play it here for you. That he did a little video holding one of my books, which I thought was really neat. Really nice guy, so check it out.
Welcome to NBA Jam Portland Tournament Edition. And we're looking at some pretty cool pictures of NBA Jam here. And right now we've got a little Afternoon Delight Tournament Edition. That's right, ladies. Grab that joystick, men. Get those quarters ready to pump in because it's heating up in here. Boom shakalaka.
So anyway, it was a fun weekend being by Tim. He was a really nice guy. Not only did he keep the crowd entertained, he was just a generally nice person. He watched my table when I went to my panel, and he was just really cool throughout the weekend. Really interesting to talk to. Now, another person I saw on that Saturday was it was equally cool, but had just a little bit of funny negativity to it. So Ed Logg comes up, legendary Atari programmer. He's worked on a lot of classic arcade games. He worked on Centipede, Super Breakout, Asteroids. Legend in the industry. He came up, said hello. He was a cool guy, but he was looking at my classic home video games book, the one that covers the Atari era. And he was thumbing through it, and he told me I really should have included the programmers in the book, should have listed those with the games. Fair enough, maybe I should have, but he was pretty serious because he was talking about how when Activision was formed, it was Atari employees that switched over, that formed Activision so they could get credits for the games they made, so they could get, more royalties and all that kind, so they could, just so they could get their name on the games. Fair enough, maybe I should have put their names in them. Okay, so thanks for that, Ed Logg. I'm glad you came by the table. Another person I ran into on Saturday was Adam Koralik, really popular YouTuber and a good friend of mine. I'd seen him recently at Mo GameCon. We were both guests at that show. Really cool to run into him again. He was in the vendor's room shopping. Now, he was looking at Sega Saturn cases. Now, if you guys know, a lot of you collectors know that Sega Saturn games were packaged in these oversized plastic cases. Now, they're really cool because you get a good, nice box art, big picture, nice oversized manual, really good looking. But as you know, these cases, they're neat, but they're very breakable, especially, they get cracked real easy, they get pushed down, and these break. And so what Adam was doing, he was looking through some cheap sports games, looking to, replace some of his cases. Those cases work for the Sega CD as well. So if you're a collector of the Sega CD and Sega Saturn, what a lot of people do is they buy the cheap sports games, and then for more desirable titles like these, Panzer Dragoon games and the Earthworm Jim, Special Edition, or some of the better Sega CD and Sega Saturn games, you can buy cheaper sports games, sometimes for just $1 or $2 or $3 a piece that are in nice condition, and you replace the cases on your more desirable games. So that's what Adam was doing, so it was cool saying hey to him. So it was a busy Saturday. I sold a whole lot of books, which was great. That's always fun. A lot of people came up with books for me to sign. A lot of readers came by and said hello. Really, really cool. So, it was busy all day Saturday, obviously. There were thousands of people there, so I was exhausted by the time 5:30 rolled around, and it was time to get some dinner. Now, what's really neat about the Portland show and about Too Many Games and a few other of the big shows is they feed you on Saturday evening. And so at 6 o'clock, I believe, was the VIP dinner. And so that was a lot of fun. Once again, catching up with my friends in the industry like Leonard Herman, Michael Thomason, Kinsey Burke, and a bunch of others. A lot of fun. And a really, really nice dinner. We had salmon and chicken and pasta, salad, rice. We were treated like kings. It was so great. Thank you so much, Portland Retro Gaming Expo, for treating your guests so well. And it's in the same room, the VIP dinner's in the same room as the auction. And so we hung out, ate, and had some drinks and stuff. And then the auction kicked up, 6:30, or actually about 7-ish, a little after 7. And so what was interesting about this auction, I always liked these video game auctions. They started, the Classic Gaming Expo always had auctions, and the Portland auction is very similar. It's just, a lot of big ticket items, and it's real interesting to see what all this stuff goes for. In particular, they had a McDonald's Nintendo 64 setup. Now, if you were going to McDonald's in the 90s, you might remember, the TV screens with those Nintendo 64 controllers hooked up to them in the kids' play area. And when my kids were little in the 90s, we would go to McDonald's every Thursday morning, and I would let the kids play while I read or whatever, or play with them, run around and get breakfast and everything. And then sometimes they'd play some Nintendo 64, and it was really neat to see those in the auction. So that was definitely a nostalgic flashback. So after the auction, which the auctions usually last a pretty long time, 3 hours or so, we made our way back to the hotel. Once again, big meet up in the hotel lobby, at the bar. And once again, had a lot of fun. Tim Lapatino swung by, talked to him for a good while. It was really cool catching up with him. He wrote The Art of Atari. If you don't have that book, you definitely need it in your collection if you're into retro games. Great seeing you, Tim. A bunch of other gamers and industry people were there. Just a ton of fun. Probably stayed up way too late Saturday night, but maybe a story for another time. So Sunday, another busy day. Sunday didn't start till Saturday morning. It was a 9 o'clock showtime, plus I had to set up. Sunday wasn't until 10, so it was a little more laid back morning. I could sleep a little later. And another busy day. And I actually sold out of several titles, several books, which is nice. I would have liked to have had them a little longer that day because I probably could have sold a few more books, but it's always good to lighten my load so I don't have to haul a bunch of stuff back to Dallas-Fort Worth. So Sunday was great. And now Sunday, I did have a little extra time to spend in the vendor's room because it's a little, it's still really busy, but it's a little slower. And Zoe Howard, thank you so much for coming by and watching my booth a couple of times so I could look around. In the vendor's room, it's always huge at Portland. Massive vendor's room. Everything from, Atari Commons to cheap Famicom games, all the way up to, just graded, high-end games behind glass. Stuff like Little Samson, stadium events, the NWC cart, all that kind of stuff, and everything in between. Box Sega, box Super Nintendo, the works. It was a really great vendor's room. So it was fun to actually get up and look around. Thank you, Zoe Howard, for that. Now, while I was looking around, I noticed the Angry Video Game Nerd, James Rolfe. He was, 3 booths down from me, but I'd been so busy, I hadn't had a chance to say hey to him or get a photo op or whatever. But at one point, I was able to get away, and I actually was with Ryan Berger's daughter in line. Ryan Berger publishes Old School Gamer magazine. And so his daughter and I got in line, and we were to talk to James and sort of talk to him about Old School Gamer magazine. And so she brought him the convention special magazine, that Ryan gives out at all the conventions, just like a little sampler issue. And he was really glad to get it because he had gotten the other issues of Old School Gamer magazine in the mail, and he was happy to receive the convention special because he's an old, Angry Video Game Nerd. He used to be the Angry Nintendo Nerd. He's definitely an old school gamer. He's got a lot of videos on the classics, and he even had a recent video on magazines, so he definitely likes magazines, so he was appreciative of that. Really cool to say hi to him. I met him originally back in 2009 at Screw Attack Gaming Convention in the Dallas area, so always cool to see James. Thanks, James. So speaking of Old School Gamer magazine, you can get that. That's a quarterly publication, and just message me. I can set you up with a free digital subscription. Just, you can message me through Facebook or through YouTube or Twitter. So let's see. So Sunday, I actually, by the time about 4 o'clock rolled around, I actually, I decided I was really running low on books, and I was pretty much done with being there all day. I mean, all weekend. It'd been a long weekend, but a super fun, jam-packed weekend. I was ready just to have some fun and relax. So around 4:30, I decided just to shut down my table, and that way I could walk around some more, and I could actually go see the Videogame Museum. So each year at Portland, they have a separate area with the museum set up. And this year, being 2019, they had the 30th anniversary of the Sega Genesis. John Hancock brought his complete boxed collection of Sega Genesis games there. So before I wrap up, there's three people in particular I want to thank. Now, all through the weekend, I saw so many friends like Walter Day and just so many fellow gamers, and I would sit here listen, 200 names if I could drone on and on. But I really want to give a special shout out to Rick Weiss, who was one of the guys that runs the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and he invited me out to the show and to be a guest panelist and everything, and I really appreciate that. And Kelsey Lewin, who I did a panel with, and who owns Pink Gorilla Video Games, who always is ready and willing to, if I have some books left over, she'll buy them wholesale for her stores. So that lets me over order a little bit, so I have some leeway when I go and set up for books, because it's a hassle and pricey to ship them back. So thank you, Kelsey, for that. And an absolute huge shout out to John Hancock, who put up with me as a roommate. I really appreciate it, John. Very nice of you. So anyway, just a fantastic weekend overall. I did have some pickups from the convention. Now, speaking of the Videogame Museum, I bought a copy from them. They had a stack of mint copies of Blip, the Video Games magazine. This was an early 80s magazine. Brought back memories. It's pretty neat. And so that was cool to get. It was just $3 at the show. I gave them $5. I like to support the museum, kick in a little extra couple of bucks. For just $8, I got a complete boxed copy of Pac-Man Pinball Advance for the Game Boy Advance. Now, I love all the homebrew games coming out. There's so many good ones, and I don't buy a whole bunch of them. They're kind of expensive, and there's so many of them now. But every once in a while, there's one that I just have to get. At this particular show, I mentioned Baby Pac-Man earlier. That's the great arcade game that I like. That's arcade video game pinball hybrid. Well, Atari Age came out with Baby Pac-Man for the 7800, which is really neat. This is the first time there's been a home version of Baby Pac-Man. Since it's a video game pinball hybrid, nobody had done one before. But they just did, as you can see by the back of the screen, the pinball version is just done as a video game. So really neat, really cool box art, and I played it at the show, at the Atari Age booth. It's excellent. And my buddy Robert DeCrescenzo programmed it, and he's written some stories for the SNES Omnibus, so it was great catching up with him. Thank you for that. Really cool homebrew, some nice pickups there. All right, guys, if you could comment on this video, did you go to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo this year? Tell me your experiences. Who did you meet? What did you do? What games did you play? If you've been before, in past years, just let me know in the comments below. Speaking of comments, last week I did an episode of Tales from a Retro Gamer. Well, I got busted at school for playing video games in class. Now, I had a lot of comments on that, and I had several people told me in person and in the comments that they disconnected the speaker on their handheld Mattel games so they could play them in class and not get in trouble. Now, Eric Plunk says, in high school, my friend would load games onto our TI-83 Plus calculators, and we would sneak and play them. Now, that's pretty smart because, the calculator, it looks like you're using it for school, but, it had games on it as well, so probably easier to get away with that than trying to play a Mattel game. Video Game Obsession says, I got caught in class playing my Nasonic Pac-Man watch. This seemed to be a Pac-Man themed episode. The sad part is that the teacher placed it on his desk after confiscating it from me, and at some point it was stolen, likely by another student. The school said it was my fault for bringing it in, and that was that. So boom, my mean basketball coach didn't take away my basketball game, but poor Video Game Obsession had his Pac-Man watch stolen. Anyway, thank you for those comments, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching this video. The next event I'll be doing is the Houston Arcade Expo. I believe it's in the middle of November, but just go to Houston Arcade Expo, Google that, and you can find information on that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. I really appreciate it. I'm getting close to 1,000 subscribers. Guys, take care and peace out. Talk to you later. I did hear a whole lot of NBA Jam voice effects that weekend, which I might have dreamed a little bit, but we'll talk about that another time. So another person.
What, a little bit?
Okay, forget that part. I'm going to start that part again.
What?
Dreamed about. Just stupid. Never mind.